Of Superior's police chief, who is also a member of the police department, is suing the city and a former police captain in a federal lawsuit.
That as Mayor Payne expresses deep concerns of what's happening within the police department. Now an outside firm is going to investigate.
Northern News Now, Sophia Lauber is following the story and what the claims are being made in that federal lawsuit. Sophia?
Laura and Dan, the federal lawsuit filed by Superior Police investigator Michaela Marie Lorette alleges a tracking device was placed on her squad car without a warrant by former police captain Thomas Champagne. Lorette, who's also the wife of current police chief Paul Winterscheidt, filed the federal lawsuit in March. A separate claim in the suit alleges the city did not provide Lorette with an adequate place for her to express breast milk starting back in November of 2022. Instead, she agreed to put a chair in the women's locker room where she claimed she was interrupted by male janitors and police staff countless times. As mentioned, this comes as Superior's Public Safety Committee approved a request from Payne to hire an outside firm to investigate the department. At a meeting last week, Payne said the firm will consult on a number of overlapping cultural and personnel issues.
There are some very specific things that we'll look at. One of the challenges we have is a lot of the issues that are being raised, we have nobody with the professional expertise that is not in some way conflicted.
Payne also said the issues left untended would grow into, quote, serious problems and potentially crisis. We're working to find out if the current lawsuit is one of the personnel issues he alluded to. In a statement today, Payne said, quote, the city of Superior has both the facilities and policies necessary to fully support pregnant and breastfeeding mothers over and above the requirements imposed by law. Chief Winterscheidt and Lorette's attorney both declined to comment. We did look into Wisconsin state statute and found that while placing a GPS device on a car without consent is illegal, that does not apply to law enforcement officers while working.
All right, thank you so much, Sophia. We'll continue to bring you updates on this situation as it develops.